How did this get here? I don't remember bringing this up here. Well, I haven't read this in a long time. Might as well talk about it. Eragon was written by Christopher Paolini and published in 2002, so 22 years ago. Man, I feel old. It is the first book in the inheritance cycle. Now, if you know me at all, you know that I love dragons. Dragons are the best. I always like reading different types of fantasy novels to see how dragons are portrayed. And I think the most fun I've had experiencing dragons in my readings is in Paolini's Inheritance Cycle and Novik's Temeraire Chronicles. We'll go over the Temeraire Chronicles at a later date. If any of you have any recommendations on fantasy adventure books about dragons, please let me know. I would love to read them. Anyways, I actually remember when these books were quite popular. While Eragon did come out when I was pretty young, I remember seeing libraries advertise the second book, Eldest. I wasn't drawn to the series at first. I thought the covers looked cool, but I thought they would be too much for me. It wasn't until I was in high school when I decided to check out the series. Inheritance had already been out a good while, and I figured it'd be better to knock out the whole series now, since it had long since ended by then. Because of how dense each of the books are, I haven't read this series as often as I should have. Now to clarify, I don't think these are as dense as Dune or the Lord of the Rings books. I know the reason for the denseness is because of all the world building, but we'll get into that later. Anyways, my point is, I haven't read this series in almost a decade. Let's see if it's as good as I remember it. Now the series takes place in Alagasia, which is currently under the tyrannical rule of the supposedly last dragon rider, King Galbatorix. He's been ruling for centuries with an iron fist, but he's got a couple of problems. One being a group of rebels known as the Varden, and another problem being he can't find where the elves and dwarves are hiding, which is frustrating because he wants them to join his cause for world domination or be destroyed. Eragon begins in a dark forest at night. An elven woman named Arya is escorting a blue dragon egg back to the Varden from her home, Elismira. She is ambushed by a shade named Durza and a band of Urgles. Arya's guards are killed, and she sends the dragon egg away with magic. She's then captured by Durza. We then cut to our protagonist Eragon, a 15-year-old boy who lives with his uncle Garo and cousin Rorin in Carvajal. Eragon is out hunting in a range of the mountains near his home called the Spine when the dragon egg appears before him. He doesn't think it's a dragon egg at first, since it's believed that all dragons except for Shuriken are extinct. Eragon takes the dragon egg home with him and actually does try to trade it off, but to no avail. One night, the dragon hatches from the egg. Once Eragon touches the little dragon, his right hand is marked with a silver symbol. Now, Eragon doesn't know much about dragons, so he seeks knowledge from Brom, the local storyteller. Brom teaches him quite a bit, but starts to suspect that Eragon may be hiding something. It's actually from Brom that Eragon finds a name for the dragon, Saphira. Eragon raises Saphira in secret, and the two learn to communicate with each other through their minds. Eragon continues to learn more things from Brom, and thus learns how to treat Saphira and what to expect from her. All is not well, though, as the Razak are in town, and they are searching for Eragon and Saphira under orders from the king himself. Eragon wants to warn Garo of them, but Saphira takes him to the Spine to escape them. Eventually, Eragon convinces Saphira to take him back to Garo, but they are too late. The Razak have destroyed his home. Garo is barely alive, but even after a visit from the village healer Gertrude, Garo dies from his injuries. Where was Rorin on all this? Rorin had already left for Therinsford to be the apprentice of a miller. He intends to make money so he can build his own home and marry his girlfriend Katrina. Now remember this for later. Rorin was not there when Garo was killed and does not entirely know how or why it happened. Anyways, Eragon wants to kill the Razak and avenge his uncle. He and Saphira are on their way out when they're stopped by Brom. Brom confesses that he knows what Eragon has been hiding and insists he come with them to help track down the Razak. Brom trains Eragon in the ways of the Dragon Riders and even gives him a rider's sword called Zarok. Brom teaches Eragon how to fight, how to use magic, and how to speak the ancient language, which is part of teaching him how to do magic, but we'll get into that later. Anyways, their many adventures eventually take them to Tyrm, where they meet up with Brom's old friend Jode. Now, the current plan is that they can track down the Razak from a flask of deadly oil that they dropped. And since Tyrm is a coastal town, Jode has access to some of the records on where the oil was shipped, since it's pretty rare and only jewelers use them. While Brom and Jode try to get these records, Eragon explores Tyrm for a bit and runs into a fortune teller named Angela. He also meets the werecat Solemboom. Since Solemboom is willing to talk with Eragon, Angela offers to tell him his fortune. Now, I won't go into too much detail on what was told here, since that would spoil the rest of the series, but all you need to know is that the fortune is correct and is referenced a bunch throughout the series. Solemboom also gives Eragon some important advice, which is also referenced throughout the series. It seems Braum and Jode's plans have failed, so now they have to try a new tactic. Jode brings Eragon with him to the offices one night, and Braum sneaks in. They all search through the records and manage to track the shipment to Dras Leona. Once Eragon, Braum, and Saphira make it to Dras Leona, Braum looks around the city seeking people who know about the oil shipment. Eragon, meanwhile, is just looking around and ends up entering a cathedral. Now this cathedral is currently under the control of the worshippers of Helgrind. Helgrind is an ominous, four-peaked mountain near the city. We'll get into why this cult worships it in a bit. Anyways, guess what happens to find Eragon in the cathedral? The Razak! Eragon and Braum escape the city, but they are ambushed in the night and captured. Saphira is captured as well, since the Razak threatened to kill Eragon if she didn't cooperate. A young man named Murtagh comes to their rescue and drives the Razak away, but not before one of the Razak throws a knife toward Eragon. Braum takes the blow for Eragon, and the hit is fatal. As he lay dying, Braum reveals that he used to be a rider, and that his dragon was killed long ago. She was named Saphira. Braum gives Eragon his blessing and then dies. Eragon buries Braum with magic, and Saphira turns the stone tomb into a diamond one. Murtagh joins the party now, since he too had been hunting the Razak. And the new plan is to find the Varden, since they'll be safer there. That's also where Braum intended to take Eragon once he was ready. Braum actually told Saphira how to find the Varden, and their first stop is in Gilead. Murtagh goes into town since he feared Eragon would be discovered, since there's a bounty on his head now. Murtagh comes back later, and they plan to meet with Braum's contact the next day, but they are all ambushed in the night. Eragon ends up getting captured, while Saphira and Murtagh escape. Now, throughout Eragon's journey, he had been having dreams about a woman in a jail cell. He doesn't know who she is, but he does find out through magic that she is in fact real and needs help. Well, it turns out that Eragon and this woman are in the same prison in Gilead. While Eragon is imprisoned, he finally meets the Shade, Durza. Durza tries to interrogate Eragon, but to no avail. Eragon eventually tries to escape and find the woman, but it seems Murtagh and Saphira had already planned to rescue Eragon. Murtagh makes it just in time, and Eragon finds the woman. It's Arya, the elven woman from earlier! Saphira helps everyone escape to safety, and Murtagh shoots Durza in the face with an arrow, but that won't keep him down. Shades can only be killed by getting stabbed through the heart. While everyone does manage to escape, they still have the king's armies and the Razak on their tails now. Eragon believes the best course of action now would be to cross the Haderach Desert and hope to find the Varden on the other side. Before they make their way there, Eragon telepathically communicates with Arya. Arya shows Eragon where to find the Varden and what to say so they'll let him in. Also, it turns out that Arya has been poisoned and she doesn't have much time left. The only people that can help her now are in the Varden. Well, Murtagh doesn't want to join the Varden because he is the son of Morzin, one of the Forsworn. The Forsworn were 13 dragon riders who joined Galbatorix in his rampage. All of them are dead now, Morzin being the last to be killed in a duel with Braum. That's actually how Braum got Zarok. It's Morzin's sword. Anyways, Murtagh believes that the Varden won't take him in due to his heritage. Which is completely fair, since Morzin always hung around Galbatorix, and it would make sense that Murtagh was around the king as well. Murtagh isn't for the Empire, but he also doesn't want to be part of the Varden. He wants to forge his own path. Well, the party finally make it to the Varden hideout, but an army of Kull, lead Urgles, have followed them all the way there. The Varden drive away the Kull and escort Eragon and crew inside the mountain to Farthen Djur. One of two twin sorcerers is here to read Eragon's thoughts to make sure he's trustworthy, but Murtagh refuses a mind reading. They aren't brought any further into the mountain for this reason. Murtagh confesses to Eragon that he did spend some time with the king, but after seeing all the pain he's been causing, he ran away. Murtagh has been running from the king ever since. Eventually, they all meet with Ajihad, the leader of the Varden. Since Murtagh still refuses a mind reading, he has to be locked up until he's ready for one. Ajihad tells Eragon that Durza was not killed and will definitely come back. Ajihad appoints Auric, a dwarf, to be Eragon and Saphira's guide through Tronchim, the great dwarf city. Auric later introduces Eragon and Saphira to his uncle, the dwarf king Hrothgar. Eragon also meets Ajihad's daughter, Nasuada. And since the people of the Varden haven't seen a free dragon rider in so long, they appear to worship him or show him a lot of respect. Some of them even ask him for blessings. And, as such, Eragon also blesses a baby. Now, keep this in mind for later, this is important. Apparently Angela and Solemboom are here as well. Angela claims to only be here because important stuff is happening right now. I always found that funny. Anyways, Eragon is later tested by the twin sorcerers in magic, but it seems they were trying to wear him down before his combat training, or even kill him. Well, Arya intervenes at the right time and tests Eragon's combat skills. Eragon passes the test. Eragon also visits Murtagh in prison, and Murtagh has been treated quite well, which is good. Anyways, all is no longer well since the Urgles have arrived and they're in the old dwarven tunnels. Everyone tries to stop them, but it's no use. They have arrived, and Durza is back! Eragon faces Durza, but he's starting to lose. Arya and Saphira manage to shatter a large sapphire above their heads, and this distracts Durza long enough for Eragon to stab him through the heart. With the Shade dead, the day is won. Also, it seems the Urgles were under some kind of spell since they started killing each other right after Durza was killed. Also, the mind probing of the Shade was a bit much for Eragon, and he fell into a coma. In this state, someone telepathically tells Eragon to meet him. This person claims to be the Morning Sage. Eragon must meet him at Elismira, and Eragon plans to go there. Now that's where the story ends. Not a bad start. I enjoyed it immensely. Now let's analyze a bit here. Remember, I won't go into too much detail since a lot of stuff analyzed here could apply to the series as a whole. Well, let's start small. While you could say this applies to the whole series, it mainly applies to this book. The way Eragon treats Saphira. At first, he treats her as a pet. Now, that was because he didn't understand that dragons were much smarter than he anticipated. Brahm had to tell him that dragons are intelligent beings that can communicate. From that point on, Eragon treats Saphira as an equal to the point where they're both great companions to each other. I've also found it interesting that when Roran plans to leave, Eragon gets upset since he doesn't want Roran to leave, and he vents to Saphira. It's an interesting start to how they begin to bond. It's quite fascinating. Through Murtagh, we learn that both sides of the battle might not always be the best idea. While yes, the Varden may have been fighting the Empire for years, they are very picky with their allies. There's a good reason for that, but it drives away potential allies as well. Yes, it's important to trust, but not to be foolish. And then we have the Empire causing all of this destruction. The king himself is trying to hide the fact that he's been working with Urgles and Razak to solve his problem with Eragon. I like to think this book also teaches the importance of memories. Eragon doesn't want his memories probed, but he needs to in order to gain Ajihad's trust. Murtagh's mind has been probed his entire life, so he learned to stop it. All he has is his memories, and he won't give them up. There's also the history of Allegatia and how Galbatorix has changed it over the years. He had books burned that didn't match his version of events, so the dwarves and others like Jode have been holding on to these books to preserve the history of their land. Plus, there are also storytellers like Brahm who must keep the real stories alive. Garrow even said that the king would have Brahm killed if he learned about some of the stories Brahm told. Overall, this is still a pretty fun adventure, although I will admit it is pretty dense. There's a lot of details into training and world building. I understand why all of that is there since the reader needs to be introduced to the world in the first book in order to understand what's going on. The world building definitely helps, but I think some of it could have been removed. But that's just me, though. I would recommend this book for ages 15 and up, purely because of how dense it is and there is some graphic violence. There's battles going on there and they're not pretty. There was a movie adaptation of this book in 2006. It was not very good. I have seen it. A lot of actual important stuff was cut, plot twists were shown too early, and some of the direction didn't feel right. I would not recommend this. There was also a game based off the movie. According to Meta, the game was fine, but from what I've seen of the game, it didn't look very good. It is 2-player though, so that's something. If you liked the game, that's great. I hope you have fun with it. Eragon is a very interesting book that led to an even more interesting series. I had a lot of fun reading this again. In fact, I think I'll go read the other books of the series. I'm not sure why, but I get this sudden urge to read more about dragons. Oh well, it's probably nothing. Happy Series September, and happy reading!